transparent. Joel Gilbert is a best-selling documentary filmmaker. His latest film, Utopia, exposing the fact that it's not a utopia that they're building, is available at InfoWarsStore.com. I should add that, and basically gets into the whole socialist journey that people have gone through in this country. Utopia. There's no place like Utopia is the full name of the film. But he's not here so much to talk about that today. You need to get the film and give it to young people and others, folks. That's how we win hearts and minds. You can unlock somebody's mind with one piece of truth. It can dislodge an entire mountain of disinformation and fraudulent propaganda. I wanted to get Gilbert on because it was a week or so ago, a member of Congress pointed out that his connection to who we believe is Obama's real father, Frank Marshall Davis, and more of what's in Gilbert's film we're seeing in mainstream here and there, almost like the power structures dangling it out there in these kind of wars. We know there's even wars in the establishment. You're hearing criminal stuff about Hillary and her illegal emails, and Jeb Bush and illegal Nigeria stuff, lying to the FBI, not declaring income. So there's infighting within the system as well. But I'm seeing a lot of that starting to come out right now. Then you've got all these announcements, and you've got world government being pushed, and transhumanism, and smartphones spying on you, and all the rest of it. And meanwhile, you got George Soros running around spending $33 million to cause basically anti-police riots around the country to destabilize the nation so Obama can pose as a savior and come in and federalize police, which they're now announcing. We predicted this. So what's the next shoe to drop? They're power-grabbing everything, the internet, the borders, the police. Joel Gilbert, what do you think's going on? You're a big Obama expert. You've traveled the world to track this guy. What do you think's going on, Joel Gilbert?
Well, I think there's an actual roadmap that Obama is following from his mentor, Bill Ayers, and of course Bernardine Dohrn in the Weather Underground from the late 60s. They wrote a document called Prairie Fire, and the essence of that was using a line from Mao Zedong, which was a single spark can start a prairie fire, meaning one incident, one agitation can start an entire revolution. And you see Obama agitating prairie fires, such as he did in Ferguson, the Trayvon Martin case. He tried on the guns up in Newton, Massachusetts. He's always agitating. He's a professional agitator. He was trained as an agitator in Chicago at the Midwest Academy. He was a trainer for Acorn. And I think he had no interest ever in becoming president of the United States or in being president. His only interest was using the pulpit of the presidency to agitate the country and divide and polarize the nation. It is only about 50 years ago now that, 45 years ago, that Bernardine Dohrn and the Weather Underground declared war on the United States. And I think when you look at Obama's policies the last few years, his agenda for the next 2 years, I think it is open warfare against the United States to degrade and harm and eliminate the foundations of the Constitution.
You're right, and it's like it's some type of weird Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure where they're caught in a time loop because they're using an old Soviet playbook to bring down the U.S. and Israel and Western Europe long after all that collapsed. These are crazy people. I mean, they're in control right now, and they're trying to shut off the industrial base and start a civil war. These people are mentally ill.
Well, the way they accomplished it is based on a learning curve. Bill Ayers and Obama's mentors in the Weather Underground would look people in the eye in the late 60s, and they would say, we want to destroy you. We want to bring down America, replace the Constitution with a communist manifesto. We want to send 50 million of you to re-education centers and murder 25 million of you.
And have the UN basically occupy the U.S. with international forces.
Correct. They wanted to occupy the United States with Soviet, Chinese, North Korean, and North Vietnamese forces. Nobody followed them because it turned people off because it was so evil. They ended up going to jail for murdering policemen. They went into the underground for 10, 15 years. When they emerged from the underground in the early 80s in Chicago and became Barack Obama's mentors, they taught him the lesson. The lesson was, instead of looking people in the eye and saying, we want to murder you, look at them in the eye and say, we want fairness. We want to help you.
And by the way, I had Bill Ayers on about a month ago, and he literally said he wasn't a communist, said I was making it up, said none of this ever happened. And so they're now in that mode of acting passive, acting friendly, acting non-threatening. Right. And I could tell he was reading off a script.
Right. What they do is they change the terminology. Instead of "we want to murder you," the terminology is "folks and families." But the agenda is exactly the same. It's to use the support of people for helping them to, in fact, destroy them. And we've seen over the last 30 years, the Democrat Party has been taken over by these radical Marxists out of Chicago. And today the Democrat Party is a radical socialist party. And in my film, Dreams from My Real Father, which you mentioned, was back in the news with Rudy Giuliani mentioning that Obama's mentor was the Communist Party USA propagandist Frank Marshall Davis. Of course, in my film, which is in your store still, Dreams from My Real Father, I think I present a mountain of evidence that Obama's real biological father, who became his ideological mentor, was in fact the Soviet agent Frank Marshall Davis, who indoctrinated him into this radical ideology in his entire youth. And today we're seeing unfortunately, the end game of a radical in office.
You know, when I heard all this 6, 7 years ago, I didn't believe it, but there's no way it's not true, and the evidence is overwhelming. We are in so much trouble. And what are the elite thinking doing something this crazy and reckless? Well, why did Nero marry his horse? Why did, or was it Caligula married his horse? I guess Nero did stuff even worse. And these people are just insane, out of their minds, but they have a will to power, so they're taking over. Joel Gilbert's our guest. Stay with us. I'm really Joel Gilbert, the maker of There's No Place Like Utopia, an excellent film available at InfoWarsStore.com. And I know you, the listeners, know most of this stuff, or more than I do in some cases. You need to show it to friends and family. You need to have your church show it. You need to really fight the collectivism that's unfolding. JoelGilbert.net's his website. It's excellent. Joel, continue in the short segment, long segment coming up, and then we'll go to some calls. Understanding the power grab we're seeing, what do you think from your expert research the agenda is in the next 2 years?
We've seen this game plan play out. It's not a new agenda. It's the same old story where a radical leftist Marxist group takes over a legitimate political party like the Democrat Party, tricks the party itself into thinking that they're mainstream. Obama told the country he's going to cut the deficit in half. Obamacare is not a tax. He'll obey the Constitution. It was a mainstream candidate with an agenda that he never intended to implement. That's why in my film, There's No Place Like Utopia, I compare Obama to the Wizard of Oz, because he was a charlatan from the get-go, and his intentions were never good. When Dorothy gets to the Emerald City, the Wizard of Oz sends her to the witch's castle. She's taken prisoner in the dungeon. And that's what's happened in all the progressive cities throughout America that I travel to in the film: Detroit, Chicago, Denver, Newark. People are literally living in these witches' castles, the dungeons of progressivism, where they have 50% unemployment, drug cultures, no fathers, no business. They've brought this devastation upon America through these progressive policies, and they only succeeded because they manipulated and fooled not only their own party, but the American people into supporting them and giving them power. Once they're in power, they use the tools of state, like the IRS, the control of information. Unemployment is only 5%.
Well, that's what I've found whenever I've been around socialists and communists at events over the decades. I've been around a lot of them at all sorts of behind-the-scenes Democratic conventions. They're really like criminal bank robber types, like felon types I've been around before, that are really creepy and have bad will towards people. And right behind the scenes, they'll go, listen, when we take over, we're going to kill everybody. We want blood. They really are demonic villains. But then in the service, it's like, I'm liberal. Oh. I mean, they are just so sick.
Right. They've the entire program of progressivism is based on disinformation. And that's what the Democrat Party and the White House engages in today. I said the unemployment is 5%. There's voter suppression, a completely made-up story. On and on. The entire agenda is based on a manipulation and providing false information. It's disinformatia, Soviet-era propaganda coming out of the White House. And you'll see the Democrat candidate, whoever it's going to be in 2016, is going to say that we have racial inequality and income inequality. And there's a few fortunate people who are controlling all the economy, and that's why everyone else has to rise up and support the Democrat Party. So it's a type of mafia. It always has been, and they simply use the benefits of the state to enrich themselves while creating one large lower class. Socialist economies don't have a middle class. They have an impoverished society with political elites who control the wealth.
They're very medieval.
I would say so. They're a, it's a group of people that want to control others, and to be willing to lie and lie about everything. It just shows you the evil nature of those who would lie to take power and then use the tools to suppress everybody else. It's a very evil plan, and we're seeing it.
Sure.
Not in 1940s, 1950s China with Mao sending 50 million people to being starved to death in collective farms, or the Soviet gulags. We're seeing the disinformation in modern America.
We're seeing it incrementally just deindustrialize the country. And again, then we have the Republican leadership, a bunch of blue blood fascists who side with the Democrats. I want to talk about that when you come back. Talk about the film, get into any other subjects you want to cover, and then take phone calls from a lot of different listeners. Joel Gilbert's our guest. I'm Alex Jones, Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.tv. Stay with us. So please go to the site and get the powerful documentary film, There's No Place Like Utopia, by Joel Gilbert. I want to go back to Joel Gilbert now to look at what's happening. How successful has Obama been? Opposition is mounting. What do you expect him to do next? What are you most concerned about? I mean, kind of as a play-by-play, Joel Gilbert, where are we as a society right now from your perspective?
Well, first taking Obama, of course, there's endless commentary for the past several years about his failure as a president, failure in foreign policy, failure in the economy. From his point of view, which is what I've been tracing and documenting in my films, from his point of view, he's been very successful because all of this was an intentional plan from the get-go, bankrupting the country, doubling the deficit, in letting the country be invaded by illegals, which includes tremendous amount of criminals. And here in California, 40% of all prison inmates are illegals. We've got the norteños, sudeños, all kind of gangs. So these are the people coming across the border in addition to Obama's so-called striving immigrants looking to work hard. So this has been the agenda to divide the country, to break up the United States was the dream of the SDS, Weather Underground, and the KGB from the get-go, to allow these forces to maintain power in chaos domestically and the evil bad guys abroad to be able to extend and project their power without American influence in their way. The agenda of the Islamist movement, whether it's ISIS or Iran, is the same as the Marxist movement. They have a lot in common, and that's why they work together. They both view Western capitalist systems, free markets, free speech, as the #1 obstacle to taking power. Therefore, together, they view Western society as the #1 target on the path to salvation. In Islam, worldly events are an affirmation of faith. Therefore, Iran attaining a nuclear weapon and being able to not necessarily even use it, just use it as a strategic umbrella to continue their hegemony through taking over of country by country in the Middle East, whether it's Yemen, extending their influence to Lebanon, Syria, and elsewhere.
It's a signet of power.
It's a way, if you have a nuclear capability, you can then, your conventional forces have free reign because no one will attempt to stop you. So the Obama agenda, unfortunately, according to, from Obama's point of view, is unfolding very, very successfully. He's divided the country along economic lines.
I agree. Obama has been a devastatingly successful globalist socialist. And then you've got the big money banks funding him, thinking that once there's a tyranny, everybody's fighting for the Ring of Mordor. All these different special interest groups, they're all supporting tyranny because they think they're going to get greater power out of it, when instead it's destroying stability and destroying a future for humanity. I mean, it's so sick.
Unfortunately, people don't realize that the utopia on Earth is America before Barack Obama, America as a constitutional government with free markets, free speech, limited government. This is as close to utopia as we can get on Earth.
Look what our country produced. Most of the patents, most of the devices, higher standard of living, highest rates of savings. And as soon as we left free market, we